I want you to try something tonight. Imagine looking up at the night sky. For most of us, we just see this beautiful, silent backdrop to our lives, right? But what if we're actually looking at it all wrong? What if, according to ancient texts, the sky isn't just a passive canvas, but an active participant meant to signal the end of times? Welcome to this explainer, where we are quite literally looking up.
So what if the universe itself was signaling its own end? Today, we're exploring a really fascinating intersection. We're going to see exactly what happens when you take 7th century prophetic descriptions of the heavens splitting open and analyze them straight through the lens of modern satellites, telescopes, and astrophysical data. It's an incredible journey through both scripture and science. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. Past signs and eclipses.
To understand the future of the cosmos, we first have to look at the timeline of celestial events that have already happened. We're starting with the most famous, and probably the most heavily debated astronomical event in Islamic history, Shaqq al-Qamar, or the splitting of the moon. Now, the Quran describes this as a past-tense miracle witnessed by the Quraysh in Mecca. It was a literal celestial signal that the hour has drawn near.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how modern Muslims and skeptics debate the physical evidence. On one side, you have some Islamic scholars pointing to NASA's high-resolution imagery of lunar rills, those long, narrow trenches crisscrossing the moon's surface, as potential physical scarring from that very event. On the flip side, the broader scientific community attributes these features strictly to volcanic and tectonic processes. It's a really compelling dialogue between ancient text and modern geology.
And that brings us to eclipses. What is absolutely remarkable here is how the Prophet Muhammad actively separated superstition from science, and he did this way back in the 7th century. When his son Abraham passed away during a solar eclipse, people just naturally assumed the sky was mourning, but the Prophet firmly corrected them. He established what we can call the prophetic perspective. Eclipses do not happen because of human life or death. They are mathematically predictable natural phenomena meant to prompt a specific eclipse prayer, not superstitious fear.
Section 2. Threats from the sky.
Having established that foundational perspective, let's move our timeline to the very real, scientifically plausible celestial threats looming over our present. One of the major signs described in the eschatological texts is Dukhan, which translates to smoke. The Quran describes this as a visible, painful smoke descending specifically from above, acting as this suffocating global blanket covering all of humanity simultaneously.
So how exactly does a global blanket of smoke translate to actual science? Well, consider these astrophysical mechanisms. Back in 2013, the Chelyabinsk meteor exploded with 30 times the force of the Hiroshima bomb, and it left massive, highly visible sky smoke. Millions of years ago, the Shaqq impact created global dust clouds that literally blocked out the sun. So whether it's an asteroid or a volcanic winter, the universe is fully capable of producing this exact descending canopy of smoke described in the texts.
Now, take a second to look at this staggering number. $1 to $2 trillion. That's trillion with a T. That is the estimated financial damage to the United States alone if a massive solar flare, something like the 1859 Carrington event, were to strike our modern, hyper-connected world today. If an X-class solar superstorm hits us, the impacts would be immediate. We're talking GPS systems instantly knocked offline, power grids failing across entire continents, global communications completely disrupted, with recovery times estimated to take up to a decade. Now, while the Prophet obviously didn't describe the literal astrophysics of plasma ejections, the texts do extensively describe a world transformed by sudden, cascading infrastructure failures. It perfectly sets the destabilized backdrop necessary for the major end-time signs to unfold.
Section 3. The universe reverses.
That societal destabilization is really just the beginning. Let's shift gears to the most mind-bending section of our explainer, where the fundamental laws of physics begin to unravel. A very famous prophecy states that the sun will one day rise from the west. From a purely astronomical standpoint, this isn't just a quirky visual. A reversal of the sun's apparent movement requires redefining what we call east and west entirely. This means we'd be looking at a catastrophic shift in Earth's rotation or a massive change in its magnetic orientation.
So is that actually scientifically possible? Well, the scientific community openly acknowledges that Earth is statistically overdue for a geomagnetic reversal. We have the precedent from millions of years ago, and today NASA is actively monitoring the South Atlantic anomaly, which is an area where our magnetic field is measurably weakening. A total pole swap would completely invert global navigation, making this ancient prophetic claim astonishingly plausible in the eyes of modern science.
But the unraveling goes far beyond just our planet. Listen to this quote: "The day when we will fold the heaven like the folding of a written sheet. As we began the first creation, we will repeat it." Just let the sheer scale of that imagery sink in for a moment. The entire observable universe being folded up.
So the crucial point to understand here revolves around this ancient Arabic word, te. It implies an active, purposeful, and intentional contraction of the cosmos by its creator. The universe isn't just passively burning out or slowly suffering a heat death, it is actively being rolled up, exactly like you'd roll up a scroll of paper. This brilliantly illustrates how those ancient descriptions map remarkably well onto modern astrophysics. When the 7th century text talks about stars falling and losing their positions, we see the framework for that today in meteor showers and explosive supernovae. When it describes a return to initial compactness, it perfectly mirrors the Big Bang expanding from a singularity. And rolling up the heavens? That aligns incredibly well with the Big Crunch theory, where gravity eventually reverses the universe's expansion entirely. Section 4. The final splitting.
We've reached the end of the timeline, the ultimate unimaginable climax where the physical universe simply ceases to exist. The text says, "When the sky has split open and has responded to its Lord and was obligated to, and when the earth has been spread out and has cast out that within it." This is a deeply awe-inspiring description. It paints a picture of the fundamental structure of the universe breaking apart, not out of chaos, but in profound obedience.
What this represents is literally the end of astronomy itself. Now, strictly from the Islamic perspective, it's important to clarify that this isn't just pure destruction. It's a transition. The physical universe is folded away so that a new earth and a new sky can be created. And this new creation will operate with entirely new, unknown physics, designed specifically for the final reckoning.
Section 5. How to respond.
Let's move to our final section and see how all of this builds into something highly practical for our daily lives. Because knowing this timeline is really only half the journey. How do we respond to these immense concepts? The sources outline 5 structured ways to read the signs in the sky. First, with awe, maintaining humility before a 93 billion light-year universe. Second, gratitude, recognizing that a stable orbit and a predictable sunrise are immense mercies. Third is prayer, turning to the Creator during events like eclipses. Fourth is learning. Studying astronomy shouldn't distance us from faith, but deepen it. And finally, preparation. We shouldn't succumb to the apocalyptic panic we sometimes see during events like blood moons. Instead, this knowledge transforms cosmic dread into an empowering drive to do good deeds today.
The sky has always spoken to those willing to listen. The signs are there, asking us to reflect, to learn, and to prepare. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to deeply contemplate. When the sky finally splits open, will you be among those for whom it is a beginning rather than an ending? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and remember, keep looking up.